Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Vero and Happy New Year first of all. Happy 2022. I hope your new year has started well, and if it hasn't, I'm sure that it will get better throughout the year. I know it's been a while and I haven't been posting and we're already 10 days into the new year, but I hope today's video is going to be satisfying enough because it is my 2022 bullet journal setup and it's going to be in an A4 bullet journal, so completely different. You'll also notice that my background is completely different as well because I have finally moved back from Portugal to Australia. So this background will change as I settle into my new life. But basically, I'm in Australia. Anyway, enough babbling, let's get into this video because I'm starting a new bullet journal. It's twice the size of as usual, so I'm pretty excited. It's kind of daunting, but kind of exciting at the same time. Let's get into it. For the first time ever, I am using an A4 notebook as my bullet journal. This has never been practical before as I've been studying and living outside of Australia for the last 6.5 years, and A5 is such a portable size and a lot can be done with it. But for 2022, I wanted to challenge myself with a bigger size because in the Archer & Olive subscription box from March 2021, there was an A4 dot grid journal. At first I found the size to be quite daunting, but as I started planning my yearly spreads, the versatility and number of layout options in an A4 journal started popping out, and I found myself excited for this year's spreads. As always with a new bullet journal, I start off by writing my name in the front page, and this year I decided to write my Instagram handle because I don't think I've ever done that before. And if I have, I've forgotten. In 2021, I used 2 different bullet journals, and they both started out with watercolour. They were both leaf themed and I just absolutely loved how they turned out. I hadn't intended on repeating myself this year, but one day I found myself painting on random pieces of paper and I fell in love with the layout and design of these squares, as you can see. To begin my spread, I used a pencil to trace out the shapes of my letters. I don't always use a pencil beforehand, but I wanted this to look harmonious, so I did. Then, when it was time to paint, I gently erased the lines so I only had a faint trace of the pencil marks so that they wouldn't seep through the watercolour that I'm placing down. I'm using a green and a blue mixed together from my Watercolour Palette, and I'm tracing out the letters with a Calibri synthetic brush in the size 4. It's one of those long brushes that help you get even up and down strokes. Although I'm not yet 100% comfortable with it, so I'm not quite sure I nailed it, but definitely getting better. My next step is to paint these 4 petaled flowers with each petal composed of 4 strokes. I'm not focusing on perfection in the shape or form because of the sheer number of flowers I'll be painting, and sometimes I find that the quote-unquote uglier ones add character to my spread. I tried playing with the size of the flowers, but my main paintbrushes weren't doing what I needed them to do, so I did give up, although at this camera angle, it doesn't actually look too bad. For continuity purposes, I also made sure to paint quarter and half flowers near the borders to give the illusion that they were continuing off the page. I used about 5 different watercolors from my palette, 2 shades of green and 3 shades of blue. It took me a hot minute to paint everything out, and in total this page took me 1 hour to paint, which is actually not too bad. And a quick hot tip, if in case you're interested in recreating these flowers, is that I always try and bear in mind a general circle in the middle of the flower so that the petals do end up looking the same. However, as you can see, some of the flowers don't have a round center at all, and I think that's part of the charm. Because the color of the flowers were the same color as my lettering, it started to look like everything was fading together, and I didn't actually like it anymore. So to change it up, I decided that I was going to go over my beautiful lettering with a darker color, and I used a Tombow dual brush pen. The color is 379, I want to say. Yes, the color is 379, and I made it darker, and in my opinion, it looks way better. But what do you think? Should I have left it, or is the darker one better? For information, the height of the X-sized letters for the title are 2.5 centimeters tall. I chose this randomly by using the height of my ruler, so you can choose whatever height you want. I would say as a general rule, this height is great for the Tombow dual brush pens, but for a smaller brush pen, I would not recommend this height. Also, X-sized letters mean all the ones that are mid-height, so A, C, E, O, X, S, R, etc. Then the bigger height ones, I arbitrarily choose their ascending or descending height based on what I thought would work. So it's a very personal decision. And ascending letters are the T's, the K's for me, B's, D's, and the descending letters are Y's, G's, F's, etc. I'll be honest, while this idea looked super cute on my small squares when I first started, I think the number of flowers is almost overwhelming on the cover page. But nevertheless, I do love it. Also, apologies that sometimes you just see little bits of my hair sticking out into the frame, which looks funny in my opinion, but it was obviously a bad hair day for me, so that's generally why my face isn't on camera when I'm painting. So let's now move on to my year overview. I think I include year overviews in my bullet journals out of habit nowadays rather than out of necessity. I used to say they saved me time when sketching out monthly spreads because you could just look at the beginning and see what day your month started on. But to be honest, I think I use my phone more these days, so this spread is purely aesthetic and serves no real purpose. It is, however, the prettiest yearly overview I've done in a hot minute, and I know I say this every single time I do one of these, but I think this is my favorite. Which is a good thing, right? It means that I'm continuously improving. I started by, again, penciling my title overview and then using the Tombow dual brush pen in the colour 379 to write out that same word. Then I went in with my flowers, and as I've been painting them repeatedly for the last hour, they are getting easier and faster to do. If you happen to also be trying an A4 bullet journal in the new year and want to copy this spread, each month sits in a box that is 10 squares by 10 squares. The name of each month sits on the first 2 lines and the first 3 columns of the box, so the calendar of that month starts on line 3. I hope that makes sense. For the colours of each of these little mini calendars, I am using the Tombow dual brush pen colour 379 again for the initials of the days. I am using a Pentel brush sign pen in turquoise. I can't remember the real colour name for the lettering of the month names. And I'm also using a Sakura Pigma Micron size 005 for the number writing. And yes, I did handwrite all the numbers, and yes, it was a pain in my butt. I do have stamps, but sometimes I think that the look of handwriting is way nicer. I also included more flowers going down on the left side of the page because it looked bare compared to the cover page. And you don't see it here, but I did end up adding the week numbers on the side because who knows, maybe this year this spread will end up being useful. How does one even begin to create a grid spacing cheat sheet for an A4 bullet journal? Like, I don't even know how many squares I want on each of these huge pages, so I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to create this cheat sheet, but bear with me as I figure it out. I started out by counting how many boxes there were across and vertically on my page, so there were 52 and 40. I also wrote the words grid spacing and I painted on some pretty flowers. I will come back with the same color pen to draw out some grids when I'm a bit more familiar with my process. You'll see that in 1 second, but for me it was a few hours or a few days after. So back to the different grid spacing ideas I had, I just went with the usual how to split my page into 2, 3, 4 or 5 blocks horizontally and vertically. Then I drew out some calendar squares of different sizes. I also left blocks of 31 squares vertically and horizontally spaced centered of the page to give me an idea of where things could go. And that's the grid spacing cheat sheet that I made. For my future log, I debated for a while on whether or not I should use a Dutch door. If you don't know what those are, it's a smaller page in your bullet journal that you cut out to fit a specific size that you need or want. For information on all things Dutch doors, you can check out this video where I go into way more depth. It is also linked in the description box down below. My thought process was deciding between being able to see the whole year on one page or not, and in the end I chose to add the Dutch door because seeing 6 months into the future is already great, and then you really only have to flip a page to see the rest of the year. I also gave myself a lot of space for future logging in 2022 because I have many personal projects scheduled and need to be able to plan really efficiently this year. Aesthetically, this is a new favourite future log spread. However, work-wise, I do prefer the one I did for 2021 Part 2. Here's a picture. You can see how I planned this out by checking my 2021 part 2 setup video, linked here on the side and also in the description box down below. To start off this future log though, I started by dividing my page into 9. So bear with me here, this will make sense. The top 3 boxes on the 9 box grid are reserved for my header. This is also where I'll cut the excess paper from my Dutch door. The 3 middle boxes on each page is where I'll start placing my calendars, and the 3 bottom boxes on each page are blank for future logging. The dimensions of the boxes are 16 squares down for each, and then 13 squares across, leaving a 1 square allowance between each box. The exception is the middle box that is only 12 squares across, so 13, 12, and then 13. For the mini calendars, I started them at 2 squares off the big box, and after writing all of them out, I had a 4 square allowance for writing out the name of each month. I also went with a Tombow dual brush pen in the colour 312 to create lines under the calendars for future logging. I didn't go all the way down the page because I thought it might look tacky, and I wasn't sure if I was going to have that much information to put each month, so I guess we'll just see throughout the rest of the year. Across a single page, the lines start 1 square away from the edge of the first page. The first line is 11 squares long, then 2 squares break, then 12 squares long, then 2 squares break, and then 11 squares long again. I hope this is all making sense as you watch the video. I did try to make sure to show a little bit of the process this time. I did repeat the exact same steps from January to December. Then it was time for the header. To be honest, I could have left a bit more space for my header, but it does look great anyway. I kept the same 2.5 centimeter height for my X size letters and used some fancy flourishing to create the links between words. I eyeballed the gap between the heights of each of the words, but I would say it's about 0.5 centimeters. Again, I penciled the words first and then used the same Tombow brush pen to write them out. My final step was the decoration, so as you can see, just pretty little flowers across the whole page, or at least the corner of the page, and then also on the left page as well. I absolutely love drawing these, or absolutely love painting these flowers out. It's very meditative. I decided against placing flowers on the bottom of the page, but what do you think? Should I add them? Let me know down in the comments. Also, before we move on to the next spread, if you are enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up because it helps my video spread to more people. This finance tracker layout is relatively new to me. I started using it in 2021 and have absolutely loved it. It is a copy of the same layout that these 3 creators have used in some way, shape, or form. Because I am using an A4 journal this year, I don't actually need a Dutch door and can in fact fit 12 months onto 2 pages. I started measuring from the inner sides of the pages and counted 5 squares for each month. There is no square allowance between each month column, meaning that all 6 months are snug together on each page. This layout gives me 10 squares on the sides of the page for extra information. After measuring, step 1 is to write out the names of each month on the top. Each name fits into a box that is 5 by 3 squares. Then, using my ruler and the pen side of my Tombow brush pen, I traced out the lines for the tracker. The first box is expenses and will be broken down into a certain amount of categories that I have yet to determine. The next box is for income, and I've given myself the challenge of earning 3 streams of income in 2022. So let's see how that goes. The last box is the savings one, and I gave myself 3 lines for that as well, but that's really optimistic because I have no idea how I'm going to be saving 3 times. It doesn't really make any sense, but I guess we'll find out. On the far right of this spread, I have my totals boxes, so at the end of the year I can see how much I spent or earned per category. I also have a total line per month to see how much I'm spending per month, and I hope that this year will be financially stable for me and for all of us. My next spread should really be my mood board, but my printer at home isn't working, so I couldn't do it until later. So we're starting with my reading list and my reading log. In 2021, I had set the ambitious goal of reading 75 books. I sadly only read 36, which isn't bad by any means, just not as much as I wanted to.
So I'm hoping 2022 will be different. I have set the goal of reading 50 books this time, as of right now. I've decided this right now on the spot. However, there is a space enough to list 74 books, so who knows? Generally, my reading list is books that I would like to read in the year, but not books that I actually necessarily read. And also, if you have any recommendations, please let me know. I love reading any genre. On the right page, I've decided to include a reading log inspired by this pin from Pinterest. Also, I'm linking it down below if you want to click on it. I love the idea of having a calendar and highlighting the days you read and what you read, so I'm excited to try it out. I did actually draw out my headers first for this spread, which was a bad idea. I'm just lucky things fit perfectly. I was using the same 2.5 centimeter height for the X-size letters, and I traced out the space for the words reading list and reading log. I used a nifty trick with flourishing to achieve the words flowing into each other as well, which I'm pretty proud of. Then I had to start counting. I very randomly chose the height of the reading list box, which coincidentally fits 74 books. Is this a sign telling me to try and get to 75 books? Who knows? In each box, I left 6 squares for the name of the author on the right. On the right page for my reading log, I had to start counting from the bottom. I needed enough squares in height to fit 6 months, the week headers, and 1 square allowance between each mini calendar. I started each calendar 2 squares off of the divider on the left to leave space for the month names as well. Also, you'll have noticed I didn't finish writing the G for log because the color of the pen was too dark, and I had the smart idea to use a lighter color to finish this letter. So I'm pretty happy with how this spread turned out. We are finally moving on to my mood board, and I absolutely love mood boards. I did one for 2021 on my computer, and while still similar in 2022, there are differences. And it just shows me how much I have changed or how far I have come. It shows me my expectations for the year, and I think it's such a beautiful way to start off the new year. It's motivating and really highlights what you want from life. For example, in 2021, my mood board is this one right here. And as you can see, I have volleyball, some yoga. I'm really obsessed with nails and like the aesthetics of colors and water and design. And for a lot of these things, I actually did them a lot during the year. So to incorporate these elements into my life, I'm going to be printing pictures of them for my mood board as well. And this year, I'm going for exercise in the form of swimming, diving, and yoga. I want to be in the ocean, and I also want to continue painting. I think this year, if I'm financially stable, I want to get a cat. I do miss my cat, Jazz, from Lisbon, who is not my cat, but my flatmate's cat, but I still call her my cat. I want to read a lot. I want a job that I both love and that pays me well. I want to have a better fashion sense and also continue doing my nails all the time. I want to stay in touch with my friends. I want my mantra to be start now, and I want to follow these 7 lovely logics that I found on TikTok. I'd also love to use TikTok less and get more serious with Instagram and YouTube. I have 2 mood colors going into 2022, which are turquoise blue and mustard yellow. I totally vibe with these colors. I have a very positive outlook for 2022, and I'm also turning 24. It's going to be the year of the tiger, which is my year. So I have a very special hold on this year. Let's now move on to my final flip through for my 2022 bullet journal. I'm so happy with how all of the spreads turned out. So first of all, we have my cover page, then we have my grid spacing cheat sheet and my year overview. We then have my future log for 2022. We have my finance tracker, my mood board, and finally we have my reading list and reading log.
I've sadly fallen behind filming, so you won't be seeing my January setup or plan with me because I just didn't have time to film everything, but you can head over to my Instagram where I will be posting some behind the scenes footage of me filming a little bit of it because I did manage to film a little bit, just not enough to make a whole video out of it. I will be flipping through my January setups so that you can see it in my February video, so come back later for that. And if you are using an A5 bullet journal this year, so completely different to an A4, you can check out my 2021 part 2 video where I set up an A5 size journal.